Alright, for the next part of this, we're going to be starting a multi-part project. And essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking an object similar to what we did in the first one, except this one is going to be taking a single object like so, and then breaking this single object into a bunch of pieces, and then having it fall into a Bifrost liquid, and then having fluid emit from this as well. When I say fluid, I mean like smoke, fire, that kind of thing. Okay, so we're going to need a couple utilities for this. Maya has inside of it, under dynamics, there's an effect that called shatter, and this shatter is not very good. Okay, so we're not going to use that. So we need to download something. So if you search on Creative Crash, creativecrash.com, for the DG Voro PY script, you could even just search Creative Crash Voronai, for annoy, however you say that, and it'll come up in Google. There it is. And you're just going to download this, you're going to extract it, and then the stuff that you get from it will be dropped into your Maya folder inside scripts. Okay, so inside scripts I have everything that was inside there right here. I think it was these two files plus maybe like a little text document or something else inside there. Alright, so you're going to need to put that in there. You'll reboot Maya, make sure you've copied your preferences into the correct area, and then I'm going to create a new project. So we're going to call this project Sarcona underscore building shatter, and then we will accept our preferences. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we're going to shatter this building. So I created this block. I'm also going to create a little ground here, so I'm going to create a plane. And we, like I said, we're going to have some sort of fluid or a Bifrost liquid simulation type thing that these parts are going to fall into. Okay, so I'm basically going to create a little scene with this. So I went to right click and went to faces. I'm going to grab these, and I'm just going to Alt C to do my extrude, and then pull that down. There we go. Okay, so now I just have a little area here. I'll scoot that over a little bit. Okay, that's going to be important, obviously, further on in the assignment. For right now, it's good. I'm going to click these two objects. I'm going to Alt F and then do my Y stacking. That way, this is right on top of that. There's no offset there. Okay. Now, these work better if we're at real-world scale. So if I'm trying to do a real-world scale of this, I should really scale this building up. You know, how tall is a building? So if I go to building height, just into Google, Taipei 101 in Taipei, Taiwan sets records in 3 of the 4 skyscraper categories. It's about 509.2 meters tall. Okay, so we don't need to go that high. Okay, this is a small building, so maybe just like 100 meters would be sufficient. Okay, typically a floor is about 3 meters. Floor height building. I'm doing this just so you can see how simple this stuff is. That's actually what I want right there. Okay, so in this case we're about 3.5 meters up. Okay, so if I'm doing just like, you know, let's say 5 stories, so 5 times, let's say 4, will be 20 meters. These are in centimeters. Okay, so whatever number this is, I would add 2 zeros. So if I'm going 20 meters, I add 2 zeros, and that's how tall this building is. Okay, I'm also going to take the green here and just scale this green up. That way we have the appropriate thickness. And then I'm going to go and grab the flooring and also just scale the flooring up to match my proportions I had before. And then the same little trick as before for my stack right there. Now you'll notice that I'm starting to get cut off as I do this. Okay, and that's just a what happens when you're using such these real world scales. So I'm going to go to select my camera, go to the attribute editor, and I'm just going to change my far clipping plane. I'm going to add a couple zeros here, and then my near clipping plane I'm just going to put at, let's say 100. Let me see how close 100 is going to get me. This is how close I can get into it before it starts doing that. So maybe I'll set that to 10. There we go, that should be good. I don't think I'll need to get that close. Sometimes when these numbers are really far off, you get some weird coloring. Okay, so this should be sufficient. We should be right on top of that where we want to be. Okay, so there's our grid, super duper tiny, but this is real world scale ish. Okay, we're just kind of estimating this is 5 floors up. Do something like that. Make this a little bit chunkier. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to shatter this thing. Okay, so we've copied that script inside of our area. We've created our project, built our pieces to the appropriate size. I'm going to take everything and duplicate it, so I just marquee and duplicate. And I'm just going to drop it onto a new display layer. Old stuff 01. Okay, that way I can reference back to it if I ever need it. All right, so I'm going to shatter this. So to run that script, to get this script to run here, we have to figure out what command to type in to get it to open, because it doesn't just open automatically. Here's a script right there, but in order to get it to run, we have to type something down here to get it to run. Okay, so what we do is we right click on the mel, and we go to edit with Notepad++. That pops this open. And what we want to do is find the procedure that's going to allow us to do that. Okay. Sometimes up here in this little area where you have the slash apostrophe, it will tell us exactly what to run. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we have to actually just look around. Typically, it's this first thing. Okay. So this first bit, the global proc, I don't need. I just need the DG underscore Voro underscore PY underscore UI parenthesis. I'm going to copy that. Back to Maya, paste it inside here and hit the enter key, and there it is. Okay. So now the way this script works, and this is called a Voronoi shatter. It sounds like it would be said Voronoi. This is an algorithm that creates a very random type of shattering pattern here. Okay, so what it's going to do, you can see here's another pattern. What it's going to do is it's going to use particles to destroy this thing. So we're going to create particles. So I'm just going to go to my dynamics menu, go to particles, create emitter option box. I'm going to the volume emitter, and I'm going to hit create. Okay, so now a volume emitter is, if I hit F to frame this and zoom out a touch, that's the volume emitter. So I'm going to just zoom out, and I'm going to scale this up to fit the building. It doesn't have to fit perfectly. I just want it to fit pretty close. Okay, I don't want a lot of particles sticking out. That's good. Okay, so I'm going to hit play, and you'll see a bunch of little dots appearing inside here. Those are my particles. And what the script is going to do is it finds where these particles are, and it creates these little breaks in all of those. And that's how it creates the shatter. So if I realize, you know what, I want a lot more breaks to happen, then I need to rewind this, come to my rate and increase it, and then hit play. If I hit play and I keep going, like that, this is going to give me a lot of breakage inside of this building. Okay. Under my display here, under heads up display, I did particle count, so I can see there's 2,416 particles. That's basically going to break this thing into, forget the actual configuration for it, but a lot of pieces. Okay, over 2,000 pieces. It'll break this building. We can't go that detailed on this one. It'll take it forever to do. Okay, so let's keep it at 100. Let's rewind. Let's hit play. And somewhere around 200 is a good number for us to go. All right, so 200 particles will break this building up into a sufficient state. Okay. Now, if you're doing something production quality, yeah, break it up into 10,000 pieces, you know, and that's what you would want. But for this, we're just going to keep it there. All right. So I have 200 particles right there. I've run my script, and I'm going to take the width off. That's not important at this moment, but it will be in a second. And I need to grab the particles. So I just marquee between this, or I can go to my outliner and grab the particles themselves. And I need to say particles to locators. Okay, so now what happened is, if I go back to my outliner, I have this locator group, which essentially took a locator and put one locator at each particle. Okay, so step one, we created a volume emitter, scaled it up to fit, hit the play button until we had enough particles inside here, about 200 we said, and then we grabbed the particles, made them into that. Okay, so now what I can do is I'm going to grab the locators, and I think I can grab the group. We'll see. I'm going to grab the group, shift click on my building. I can do that in here, just control click inside the outliner, and then make sure this is at 0 and hit BulletShattering. Okay, it gives me an error. I probably need to actually grab the locators. No valid objects applied. Okay. Oh, first select an object. There we go. Then the locators, then shatter. Okay. Now this is kind of the cool part to watch, is you can see them filling up this box with all these different pieces that it's creating. Alright, so I paused it while it was calculating. It took a couple minutes to do. But now you see I have all these pieces in here, these little chunks of data. So I'm in wireframe, I'm going to hit 5. And what I need to do is I need to look around this entire thing. It doesn't happen all the time, but occasionally what happens is we're missing a piece. And it's part of the script and part of how it does its thing that, you know, sometimes we're missing a piece and all we have to do is maybe pop a couple of these locators out of here and then, you know, we're good to go. Okay? Alright, so there we go. Alright, so now we have, if you look, we have these pieces and it hid our building. Alright, if we look at the P-cube1 here, you'll see that P-cube1's visibility is turned off, so we can't see it. So all we see are these pieces. So if I click on a piece and move it away, you'll see that we don't see the piece. We do see this box. That's our particles in our emitter. We don't really need those anymore. So I'm just going to grab those guys, make a new layer on here, and call this setup junk. And make sure it's added, and then hide it. I'm also going to take the locators and right click and add those too. No need to see those guys. Okay, so now we're left with just all of these individual pieces. So now what we want to do is we want to get these pieces to actually be able to fall down. We're done with the script. We'll close that. So I'm going to grab all the pieces here. I don't want the ground, so I'm going to hold down Control and marquee the ground. There we go. And I'm going to go to the space bar. Go to Bullet. There it is. Okay, remember if it's not loaded, we go to Window, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager, and we turn Bullet on right there. Okay. Now again, this is something where once I go to Bullet, I don't want to have to take it off Bullet and then put it back on, whatever. So I'm going to start saving in iterations. So let's save scene, Bullet, scene 01. And then we can even do an underscore. Let's do the underscore here and do before dynamics 0, 1. Okay, and then we'll do another save as. And we'll call this one after dynamics 0, 2. Okay, this is where we're starting to add our dynamics. So bullet, create a rigid set option box, give it a name, building, and apply and close. Okay, so now you'll see in this case that my building already shattered. Well, I'm at frame 50, so it just kind of figured out where it's supposed to be. I'm going to rewind, and I'm going to hit play. And what we're going to see is this funky thing happening here. My building is just going crazy. All right, so let's rewind, and I know why it's doing that, but I just want you to see what's going to happen. Under bullet, I go to select solver, go to the attribute editor, and I'm just going to set a couple things here. So first, internal fixed frame rate 240. I'm going to go to the building initial state. Okay, remember the building initial state is all these individual pieces. And I'm going to go to collision attributes, change this to hull, and then take my collision shape margin to 0. Okay, now I rewind it again, I hit play, and you'll see that nothing is going to happen. Okay, now I'm going to hit something against this. It actually is moving slightly. You can kind of see super duper slowly it's moving. Okay, I'm going to rewind it. I'm going to launch an object at it. So I'm just going to make a sphere. And I'm putting it pretty close because I want to just do some tests. Okay, so I grab the sphere, I go to create active rigid body, sphere, dynamic, mass is 10, wonderful. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the attribute editor. I'm going to go to the bullet rigid object. I'm going to go to my initial conditions, and then remember I have to launch something at it, just like in the last one. So I'm going to say this is the x direction, the negative x. I'm going to say in the negative x direction go 100 units. So we rewind again, we hit play, and 100 units is super slow. So let's rewind it and drop another number inside that. So now we're 1400 units. Okay, it hit it and did nothing. Let's take the mass of this guy up. So 103. I'm just adding a number in here. 103, 100 even isn't going to make a big difference. Yeah, let's make this even more. Let me see what the mass of this is set to. Rigid body, the mass is 1. It's hitting it, it's just not doing anything further. It's just Right. Let me give this a little bit more push. A little more push. A little bit more weight. Just add another 1 at the beginning of this. And I really cranked up the weight here. Let's really crank it up, apparently. We gotta really kick this up. I've never had the weight this high. And what we're gonna see is that it's really behaving kind of weird in how these pieces are moving. Let me give myself some more frames. You'll see that the pieces are actually like falling in a circle. Okay? And the reason for that is if we were to jump back to when we first created this, I never had any of these pieces center pivoted. Okay, they were all just kind of like wherever they got created, that's where they were, and their pivots were all down here. Well, now that kind of screwed it up. So I'm going to jump back. So I'm going to go to Open Scene, and this is why we do that before Dynamics. And actually, I didn't save the scene, so I'm going to go to my After Dynamics. Okay, and you'll see where the pivot is on each one of these pieces. And it just doesn't like that fact that it's there. So I'm just going to marquee them all. I'm going to center pivot. There we go. Alright, and then we'll go into creating our rigid set, building, applying and closing. It looks like a much better breaking thing here. And if I hit play, I can see how they shatter outward. Okay, perfect. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Selecting the solver, attribute editor, change this to 240, go to my building, setting this to hull, taking off that collision shape margin. Rewind it and hit play. There we go. Alright, I also need to take the ground, and I need to make the ground a passive. So go to the option box. Because we have this little dip here, I need to make sure I set this to auto compound and set that to static. Okay, rewind and play. Nothing's going crazy. Good. Now let's create our sphere. And again, I'm sizing it up, keeping it relatively close so we can test it, and then I can pull it back. So we'll just set the collision shape to be a sphere. It's dynamic. Create. We'll give it a little bit of, oh, there it is, initial conditions. A little bit of push. Again, I have to go higher. And you can see the building is already kind of collapsing. That's fine. I can let it, start to collapse. Okay, so we're sending this 12,000 units. And I'm going to take the mass up to 1,000. It's going a little bit too quick. Let's say negative 6,000 and 10,000 units of mass. I'll pull it back a little bit. Grab this rigid body again by going to Bullet, select Solver, into the building initial state. I'm going to set this mass really low, 0.01. Alright, let me do a little troubleshooting as to why this is taking so big of a mass to actually fall. Okay, so what I did was I just had to crank that mass way up. So I'm at 6,000 for my initial velocity, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and about 1,000,000 for my mass for that. And then my mass on my building is set to 0.01. Okay. So now I'm getting an effect that looks much more dynamic. Now the building is actually falling before the ball even gets there, which obviously we don't want to happen. In our last scene, we didn't have too much of that happening because everything was already kind of locked out in the correct position. So what we need to do is tell Maya that the building is initially sleeping. It's not doing anything at the start. So we go to Bullet, select Solver. Under the initial conditions, we say initially sleeping. And I also do glue shapes. That way they're kind of stuck together until they're pulled apart. Okay, so we rewind again. We hit play. And then we see that. Okay, now I actually have, you'll see, there's some dislocation here. There's my ball, and then there's this ball. Rewinding this, going back to the Bullet Solver, and then just saying refit. Sometimes that'll fix that issue. You'll see, definitely fixed the issue there. Okay. What I've also done in this scene, because it was going a little bit too slow even after it fell, I went to grab the solver, and I changed my gravity to negative 980. The default is negative 9.8. It means it's going to go down 9.8 meters per second. Okay. So if you look at this, this is gravity, real gravity. The rate of acceleration is 9.8. So Maya, remember, is in centimeters. So as I set this to 9.8 meters, we have to set this to what centimeters would be. So just to see, here's negative 9.8. Oops, rewind it. Come on. When you are in Maya, to make sure you rewind your stuff. Okay, so here's 9.8. You can see how far these pieces are flying. It doesn't look realistic. If something hits that object, obviously that we can adjust the mass and all that, but we want it to shatter, but we don't want the pieces to go flying into outer space. I'll give myself some more frame. You'll see that these just keep going flying and flying and flying. Even the ball itself looks like it's flying into outer space. So let me rewind this, and if we set this to, just so you can see, negative 98, which would be decameters, which is between centimeters and meters. It does an okay job. It still looks a bit slow. But setting it right to negative 980, it seems like we get a good effect. Let me refit the ball again. I'll even take this collision shape margin off. I don't need that. Now it looks much more realistic in how the ball's hitting it and knocking it down. Now if I wanted the ball to just fly right through there, again, I could just take and add a couple zeros to my mass, and you'll see that the ball's going to fly right through there. But the dynamics on all these objects is going to look much more accurate having that mass set to, or the gravity set to, an appropriate value. Okay. So now it becomes, again, playtime. Let's save our scene. This is our After Dynamics 02. And then now we can just kind of shrink this. And our goal is that we're going to do kind of like a meteor attack. So we have this plane here, and we're just sitting here, and all of a sudden this meteor is going to come and crash through the building. Okay. So in order for that to happen, we have to just aim correctly. Right now, we've missed it. So we'll give a little bit of velocity going in the X direction and a little bit going in the negative Y. So I did negative 1,000 in the negative Y. There we go. And I think I'm going to take the mass of that down some. I think maybe 5 million for the mass. You have to play with the numbers and just try to find something that you're happy with. Okay, I still think it's probably a little bit too much mass. Let's go with 1 million. So I want to contain this. I don't want this to go all over the place. Okay, so that's good there. I like the way that's falling. It gives me enough area that, you know, when this falls into, this is our water. When it falls into this little pit of water here, we have plenty of stuff for that to happen. Now, it doesn't really look like it's deep enough, so I want to correct that. I'm going to grab this and go to bullet and say remove bullet from selection, and that just brings it back to the original shape. Then I can grab the edges here. There we go. And I'm just going to pull that edge over, grab this edge, shift double click that edge, pull that over. Oops. This edge, shift double click that edge. There we go. So this is just giving me enough room in case they fall off the edge, which obviously a couple of them did. Okay, that's good. So now let me go to faces. Make sure I grab just the faces inside here. I'll pull it down a bit more. Okay, I'm even open this up a little bit more too. I'm going to hit B to get rid of this line work that's happening. Like that. And then like that. Okay. So back to object mode. Bullet. Create passive body. Auto compound. Static. Apply. Okay. So we rewind again. I want to make sure too that this collider margin is turned off. Okay. Back to 0. I don't want to have any margin there that's going to help it fall down. All right. So now if we look at this, you can see that these objects are not really landing where it should be landing. They're actually, you know, floating a little bit. Here they're fine. They're hitting the ground right there. So I'm going to rewind this, click on the ground again, attribute editor, and I'm going to change this from auto compound to compound. And rewind and hit play. Now we see that these objects are actually going all the way to the bottom, which is where they should be going. Good. Okay, so now we're just getting into the artistics of it, of, you know, how we want this to hit. There's certain things and angles and all that. If I switch this view, I don't see anything from that view. I switch it to like this. You see how I hit the corner here, and it gives it a little bit different falling than the previous one. If we go a little bit higher, a little bit over, now we're hitting the top and getting again a different look to that that hit. Okay, and if we're hitting it from the top, we might even be able to go in here and take that mass up a little bit more. Again, do extremes and then do some tweaking. Okay, whoa, still way too much. That's why we do the extreme. Then we can come back and tweak it. So now I'm just doubling it to 2 million. Okay, I want to keep this contained in this area. I don't want to go too far out. That's good. I actually lost a piece. That piece fell right through. Rewind. Play again and see if that piece falls through again. Sometimes just scrubbing and moving around, yeah, it does. It's odd. Will cause that to happen. I'm not going to scrub through. I'm just going to watch over here and see if a piece falls through. It just falls literally right through. Now it's kind of off screen enough where if I'm filming it like this, that we wouldn't see it happen. And that's just like a little trick so that we don't see stuff like that happen. But, you know, you can't, dynamics isn't perfect. So, alright, so it looks good. Rewind it again. I'm going to hit a couple different angles just to see. I don't want it to be, you know, this is why I'm kind of going higher, and so I don't want it to be hitting on the bottom. And then you can see how it hits the bottom, and then the whole building seems to collapse. And there's not a whole lot of blowout. It's just kind of like a crumbling. Okay, so I'm going vertical with it because I want to have that kind of impact where it kind of shoots out. So I'm just trying to find that sweet spot. I think there looks good. If we had a good enough amount in the water. Oh, that's no good. Let's rewind. See, even like slight adjustments, I moved it up maybe a unit. And then I'm just watching the whole thing. Making sure we're not getting anything weird, like that piece flying. Maybe I'll just touch this over a little bit. And that happens just because they get too close and then it just intersects and doesn't know what to do, so it just flies away. Another piece started floating. And you have to watch out for it. You have to look around the entire thing and inspect this from several angles. See, that's the same thing. I just moved my angle a little bit. Yeah, go a little bit higher up. But we have to watch this because we're going to lock this in. Alright, there we go. That's the sweet spot right there. And I lost 2 pieces, which was fine. Didn't even notice them. Okay, so now we're going to bake this in. So I'm going to save this as. I'll just call this before bake. Oops. Save that as 03. There we go. I'm going to rewind this. I'm going to grab, let's do it to everything. Pipeline cache, Alembic cache, export all to Alembic. Time slider, yes. Yes, yes, yes. And building fall event. Okay, so that's going to put that in my cache Alembic folder. And it's going through and just writing out all that information. Okay, so now it's written it out. Now it hasn't done anything inside this scene. If I click and drag in here, you'll see that this still like freaks out. Okay, so I'm going to save scene again. I'm going to go to a new scene, and I'm just going to go to my pipeline Alembic import. And I'm going to import that building, and you'll see that this is 80 megabytes. Okay, can't see anything because I'm inside my pieces. Alright, same trick on the camera. We're going to click on the camera, attribute editor, and then add a 0 there. You'll see this black that's happening on the outside. That's because of this near clipping plane. Set that to 1, 10. That's a good number. There we go. Let me set this far clipping plane to another 0, and that should be good. Okay, so now here we go. We actually have everything in our scene. So if I go to my outliner, all that setup junk that we had before, this to that. There we go. This test, this bullet solver, we can delete those. The locator group, we can delete that. Front cameras, perspectives, particles, good. And then all the other stuff we can just kind of click on and see what it is. That plane we don't need. This plane we do need. This cube we don't need. This one we do need. We don't need. That's all the individual pieces. And that cube we don't need. So we should be left with 3 things essentially. This ground here, our building, and the ball. Those are the only 3 things that we brought in. And that's what we have. Okay. So now if we click and drag in the timeline, you'll see that we have our scene. And if we look at this, you can see that, you know, randomly we did have one piece that decided to start flying. Now, this could be, depending on where that piece is, could be a vital thing. I think at the angle that it's at, I'm going to have to go back into my other file and recache it out, because I just don't like, you know, that piece flying in there. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to my other file, before bake. Yeah, that's the one. I'm going to hit play again just to see if that one, you know, did do it when we played it originally. And he did. We probably just missed it. There's actually a couple there. And sometimes it's just a matter of, you know, luck of the draw. If we play it again, we might not get that same reaction. You see, this time we didn't get it. Okay, so I'm going to go to my bullet solver. I just want to double check. This is set to 240. Yeah, everything else should be good. I can take my maximum number of iterations up. Sometimes that will assist too. So if you look at the thing, it says number of times the simulation is evaluated between each frame of the timeline. So setting it to 30 should give us a little bit more accurate simulation. So this time let's grab just the 3 objects we actually want. And we'll export this selection to a limbic. Just overwrite that last one. Yes. And we'll watch it to see if we get any weird behavior. That way we know we have to re-export it. And we do, that piece is flying up again. Okay, so we're just going to literally just hit the export button again. And just to make sure, full result, piece sphere. Okay, just making sure I had all the right pieces. I'm gonna make sure everything's out of the way so we can see the whole scene. And then do it again. Yes. And then we watch it again. And it's dynamic, so every time there's going to be a little bit of difference in each one. So we're just watching to see if anything crazy happens. I think this is probably a good one. Yep, that's perfect. So we'll save. Not that we changed anything except for a couple settings. We'll go into a new scene. And we'll import our limbic. 76 megabytes, a little bit less. Do the same camera trick. Take this to 10. Add a couple zeros in the middle of this. Okay, and you'll see we have that, we have that, we have this. Click and drag to scrub. We had more frames. I like to have it settle. Okay, so I made sure I had enough frames in that previous one that the pieces would actually come and settle somewhat. I mean, I don't want to have the whole thing settle, but stopping it here at 120, it was kind of like anticlimactic. Because by the time this thing hits and goes into the water, now we're seeing the water move, we're seeing it ripple, we're seeing, a lot of stuff happen. And then we get to 120 and the water hasn't even settled yet. So by 160 is probably how long we're going to render it, maybe to 180 or so. I do like these pieces here falling into the pit. So that's kind of a neat thing. So we'll see. I want to make sure I have plenty of room for my water inside here as well, and everything inside the scene to settle. One of the worst things you can do is go through the process and do all this work, only to realize you don't have enough time in your time slider in order for this to look nice. Okay, so part number 1 is done. So now what we can do is we're just going to set up camera angle here, and for this one we're just going to render it through one camera for now. Okay, just our major hit. Ooh. See, that's a good angle right there because we get to see that entire action. We get to see the pieces falling in. So render settings, enable color management, mental ray, OpenEXR, name.number.extension. We're going to 222 in this case. Perspective view, quality will crank up. We'll put some final gather on this. There we go. I'm also going to drop in image-based lighting. If you're in the modeling class and you want to experiment with that, you can do so. Source images. There it is. I'm going to borrow this HDR. And let's do a little rendering. Now, I did crank up the settings just out of, kind of speed to get through the process just so we can render it out. But typically you want to keep your settings down, play with the lighting, play with all your other stuff, and then you can see it. Okay, let's go back to this, render it. So I went back to the beginning and render it. I already rendered the end. So it looks alright. Let me create an area light in here. So I'm just snapping it to the building, holding down V as I drag. And then we can get this area light. Where'd you go? There it is. Scale that down. And you see my camera angle was down here, so I'm lighting it from this side. Okay, I wouldn't want to shoot my angle there and then light it from here. Also, just for the sake of mentioning it, this HDR has a light in here as well. And if you look at where the sun is right over here, and my area light is coming from that direction. So it kind of makes more sense in how this is set up. Okay, so I'm just going to set up some stuff on the area light after I select it. Okay, quadratic. My scene's so big, I'm going to have to take my intensity up to like 10,000 at least. Use light shape, high samples is 1. And I'm leaving all the default textures on here. Default flat materials. For this assignment, we're going to keep it pretty simple. We're not going to go into anything crazy. Now it looks pretty dark. I have to go to display and color management and tell Maya that I just gave it a linear image and I want to see it as an sRGB. Okay, so now I have the ball, I have this, and I have my ground. I'm not sure if my light is even getting there. So it looks like it was pretty close to that original image. Yeah, so let's take this light intensity, add a couple zeros to it. I'm also just going to give these, I'm going to leave them flat colors, but I'm just going to give them distinct flat colors so I can see them. So the ball media, I'm going to click on the map. I'm going to go to Maya, go to my gamma correct. And then give the ball just a distinct color here. There we go, something like that. We'll go to the building and assign a Mia. We'll go to gamma correct. Go to our ground, assign a Mia. Sounds like I'm talking a foreign language, but I'm saying assign a Mia. There we go. So we have yellow here. The building is green, and the ball is blue. Okay. I'm just going to take the reflections off. Now we'll take a little rendering and see how it looks. I'm not sure that area light is even hitting anything. Go back to it. I added 3 more zeros to this, so our scene should be pretty much white right now. There we go. Okay, so now it is hitting it, so I'll just hit escape. Take out a 0. It just didn't look like the shadows were strong enough. The feel of it didn't really have what I wanted it to have. There you go. So now I have a shadow here, some more darkness there. Rendering's definitely going to take a little bit longer. That's fine. I don't see any cracks in the building, which is good. Sometimes you'll actually see some cracks. Then we just have to kind of, not show those pieces or shoot it from different angles or whatever. Okay. So now this is good. I like the way this is looking. So now we're ready to render. So render settings. Just give this a name, Sarcona _ bullet break building. OpenEXR, none, name.number, perspective camera, good. That's all good. That's all good. Okay. Let me get my final camera angle that I want. And you'll notice, remember we're working in a brand new scene. I haven't even saved this scene yet, so I want to make sure I save the scene. Alright, so that looks pretty good right there. Alright, so let's save the scene. Sarcona _ bullet ready to render. Bullet shatter building _ ready to render. I saw that it did this, but I didn't put it in the right folder because I didn't put it in my scenes. So I'm going to click on, this is already my project, click on my scenes, and then just save it in there. There we go. Alright, so now it's good. Now I can go through and render this out. Render, batch render. There we go. We're dealing with one camera, we don't need to worry about anything else. So we'll just let it go. Okay. I'm also, while I'm here, I'm just going to click my camera and set a key and save it again. That way if I want to come back to this same camera view, I can just, go through my timeline and see that. Alright, so now it's going to go through and render, and then we'll do the same process, taking it into Nuke, making it into a movie, and making it into an actual movie in After Effects. Alright, so I'm not going to reference the, or show you how to do the movie again, because we don't need to do that because you already went through that. So you just take it into Nuke, make it into another sequence that's color corrected, and then take it into After Effects and then render it out. Okay, make a movie of it and turn that in. And then the next part of this is that we're going to take and we're going to add water to this thing, and then we're going to take and add particles and smoke to this. Okay, a very cool finish to that. All right, so that's where we're going with this.